Yeah, again, like I said, dude, it's wild that they keep saying ISIS because, like, they've literally worked with ISIS. Like, come on, dude. Maybe that's why they wanted to, like, fuck up the SEO so nobody Googles Israel ISIS and finds out that, like, Bro read a really good point and proceeded to ignore to read a comment about Coke. Please. What really good point did I read?
And has also killed a senior leader of Hamas, which is designated as a terrorist organization by the UK. While UN agencies on the ground in Gaza say that fuel supplies are still urgently needed if they continue their humanitarian work. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, has this report, and be warned, there are distressing scenes.
Israeli armoured vehicles crossed into Gaza overnight, armoured bulldozers levelling the terrain. Footage provided by the Israeli Defence Force showed a column moving inside Gaza and firing tank shells. The IDF said the brief incursion was in preparation for the next stages of combat, including gathering intelligence.
Bro, they are never going in. They're never going in with, like, actual fucking ground troops, it seems like. They're like, nope. First, we bombed it from the air. Now we're bombing it with fucking tanks. Like, Jesus Christ, dude.
מאמץ מבצעי, כולל המאמץ המבצעי שראינו אתמול בצפון הרצועה, אנחנו ממשיכים לקיים פשיטות כאלה, שהתכלית שלהם היא לאסוף מידע בשטח, שנוכל להצליח.
The desire to not let Palestine be sacrificed to the altars of Hamas is legit, but I think if one is to do justice to the notion of empathy, it is to imagine the Israel position as one where good Palestinians need to drop the passive lines about Hamas. Yeah, dude, that's why Israel's been occupying fucking the West Bank, because of the passive lines that Palestinians keep dropping about Hamas. Man, come on, dog. Come on. Be serious. Be for fucking real, okay? Israel's been doing this before Hamas, and Israel will continue doing it after Hamas, okay? It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, there's unconditional support for the IDF and its actions. Is at like a 75% approval rating. Netanyahu is at an 85% disapproval rating. The IDF is at a 75% approval rating. Who do you think is dropping the fucking bombs? If we're working off of approval ratings of unjustifiable and brutal acts, then holy moly, the entire fucking Western world needs to be nuked with the broad support that they've offered to the ethnic cleansing campaign that Israel has been engaging in. If that is the standard, okay, which is not my standard and that's not your standard either, let me tell you, there's not a single fucking person that deserves to be alive then. That's crazy. We have a broad majority support for Israel in this country, and not a single person would ever advocate to do 1,000 9/11s in America and have it be justified for the broad support that the country has. Okay? Just like the broad support that the IDF enjoys as is engaging in an ethnic cleansing campaign does not justify random Israeli civilians being fucking slaughtered. Okay? This is just neoliberal propaganda that's rotted people's brains. This is the Russians should just have protested take, but turbocharged because it makes even less sense for Palestinians. Yeah, literally. No, exactly. Exactly. It's so weird that it's always America's adversaries that should have just protested harder, and that's why they deserve the fate that befalls them, oftentimes as an act of collective punishment, whether it be sanctions, crippling economic sanctions usually, or collective punishment in the form of war crimes like America invading your country and killing your civilians, your children, your babies, or Israel doing a bombing campaign in the Gaza Strip, a open-air prison that it operates personally. These are always just America's enemies that have to just withstand the might. You know? Why? Because they didn't protest. Fucking ridiculous. You would not ever allow a standard like this to apply to you. If this standard applied to you, okay? If this standard applied to you, you and myself included, we would all deserve to be ruthlessly slaughtered for our majority, consensus, broad support for the war crimes that Israel is engaging in. Same with Israel. And I don't think many of you are J.D. Pond style permanent first world genocide supporters. So I don't I don't want to hear from you about that. Okay? I'm not. The problem with military Keynesianism is that it eventually you run out of other people's countries to bomb. The White House has been quietly urging lawmakers in both parties to sell the war efforts abroad as a potential economic boom at home. Aides have been distributing talking points to Democrats and Republicans who have been supportive of continued efforts to fund Ukraine's resistance to make the case that doing so is good for American jobs, according to 5 White House aides and lawmakers familiar with the effort and granted anonymity to speak freely. Hamas won the election with 53%. Joe Brandon won with 52%. So what are you saying? So like that we can have another larger superpower do to us what Israel has done to Gaza? Is that what you're saying? But like less, 1% less? Is that what you're saying? Also, that's not even correct because Palestinian elections cannot be conducted in a fair and free way to begin with because they're under occupation. They were only allowed to have an election because America told them to have an election against the wishes of the secular parties who said that they were not ready for it. In most of those elections, which you would know if you ever read a fucking book, I'm saying it's fucked to the doom Palestine for a party that was like 1% more popular than a dead guy. Oh, okay. All right. Because in that situation, the reason why Hamas won is because they ran as an anti-corruption party against, in most races, multiple people that split the secular vote. Also, it doesn't even matter because, you know, the population in Gaza is fucking children. They're children, okay? So they didn't even get to vote in the 2006 election. They were not there. They were not alive, or they were like 3. That is, if they survived. Wasn't it a parliament system, so it would have had the power share? Yes, until the coup where, until the second flub that came down from George W. Bush that forced the coup that failed, that where Hamas controlled all levers of power in Gaza, and started the final stage of its endless endeavor to become the singular force for Palestinians. A data broker on the newly launched ransomed forums posted data for sale, which they claim has classified NATO data to include U.S. data associated with the FBI, CIA, AR Cyber, and other DoD organizations. Wait, what? Soon to declassify documents for full-scale invasion plans into Palestine involvement. I have documents that also explain the inevitable UniGov. This plan is to split into 605 parts, which will explain how the war will result in the United States government offering a solution to end the war, which will result in a government ran by 5 people that are controlled by the United States government. What? All right, let's continue.
ולהבין מי חטוף, מי נהדר, ולעדכן את המשפחות. אנחנו נמשיך לעשות את זה, המספר הזה עוד ישתנה, ואנחנו עומדים כרגע על 224.
Attacks by Israeli fighter jets. Targeted, say the Israelis, on Hamas infrastructure, command centers, tunnels and rocket launchers, most in civilian areas. It must be as terrifying for the hostages as for the Palestinian civilians. Hamas said today that 50 hostages have been killed in Israeli bombing, a claim that is impossible to verify. Now, in Tel Aviv this evening, relatives and supporters demanded that the Israeli government and military prioritize the release of the hostages and keep them in mind during preparations for the larger ground invasion of Gaza.
I have a friend, a cousin, is held hostage. Yes.
That must be very worrying.
Very. A lot. You can't sleep at night to think that they are there with the bombs and all the things that happened there. We must cease fire and bring the hostage back, first of all. This is the humanitarian and the most important thing to do.
A reminder that Hamas is still firing rockets into Israel, that you must run for cover or hit the deck. These rockets, like most, were shot down by the Iron Dome air defense system. While people waited for the all clear. In Gaza, there's no siren. No air defense system, no escape, not even in the south of the Strip where Israel has told them to go for safety. Not in their own houses, nowhere.
كنا قاعدين هنا هو صوت انفجارات بشكل مش طبيعي. كل المباني هذه كلها بفجأة هيك ضربوا يمكن أكثر من قنبلة كم من طن يمكن 6.
They have no shelters for rockets. They have no Iron Dome. They got nothing.
طن يمكن تقريبا.
And they're lobbing our rockets, our missiles into there.
كله راح هذا كله اتدمر كله تحت في لسان قاد كثير لسه.
The children of Gaza's world is literally collapsing around them. Death is overwhelming, unbearable, beyond words. So many funerals for civilians every day at the NASA Medical Center in Khan Yunis. Even as Israel announced that they had killed a senior Hamas intelligence operative, who they say was one of the architects of the October the 7th attacks. The dead mourned here are collateral damage.
كيف صار إرهابي اللي عمره سنة؟ ليش ينقصف اللي عمره سنة؟ ليش؟ لسه ما شافش دنيته، كلمة بابا ما عرفش يحكيها، أبوه ما عرفش اسمه عشان يستشهد. أطفال 7 أيام و4 أيام استشهدوا ليش؟
Wael Al-Datu, the resident Al Jazeera correspondent, lost his wife, son, daughter and infant grandson, crushed under the rubble of the building where they had fled to in central Gaza. This was Beit Hanun in Gaza on May the 10th. And this was it last week.
I need you to understand something. Like, you look at this and you have access to this information. You know who else has access to this information? Motherfucking Joe Biden. Okay? He has access to this information too. So think about that. Think about that when you hear him say something so fucking awful, like, I just don't know if I can trust the numbers coming out of Palestinian authorities.
A community obliterated. Israel may mount several more incursions like last night's before a larger foray. They call the airstrikes softening up. The people of Gaza, like the relatives of the hostages, must wonder what will ever bring this horror to an end.
And Lindsay joins me now from Tel Aviv. Lindsay, is there any more information on the timing of this ground invasion?
Well, they're not going to tell us the timing, but they do say that they are determined to go ahead with it. That is against the advice, I suspect, of the Americans and the French as well. I was talking to a colonel in the reserve today. One of his jobs is to call people individually in Gaza City and tell them to go south, where it will, he says, be safer. Of course, we've seen that...
Safer, as in not safe, because we'll still bomb the south as well, but, you know, more safe than northern Gaza. Remember that. That's what they mean.
Khan Yunis, which is in the south, is not safe at all. But then he said that what is going to happen is that Gaza City, and I quote, will be turned into a parking lot before the Israelis go in with the infantry and the tanks. Now, that is extremely chilling. What he's saying is more and more bombing from the skies. Now, he was very much on the hawkish end, I would say, but it gives some idea of the tenor of the conversation within the military, and it gives some idea of how they are determined to go ahead with this, whatever anyone on the outside says or advises.
Interesting. And there was some stuff on my phone that popped up a few hours ago, I'm sure the same on yours, that a Hamas delegation had arrived in Moscow, of all places, and the Israeli government is now calling on Moscow to kick the delegation out. Can you tell us any more?
Well, this is very interesting because Israel actually has very good relations with Russia. Of course, there are a lot of Russian Jews who came here after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And although Israel rails against all the countries that have relations with Hamas or which have Hamas delegations in them, whether that's visiting Russia or based in Qatar or in Turkey, actually they will need those countries. They need those countries now in order to negotiate for some of those hostages to get out. In fact, one of the senior Israeli
Hamas delegation, are you kidding me? There's no delegation left? Yes, there are. What are you talking about? Yeah, of course there are. Hamas's leadership structure is almost entirely outside of Gaza. They operate out of Qatar.
The advisors to Benjamin Netanyahu the other day praised Qatar for what it was doing on hostages, even as others are condemning Qatar for keeping relations with Hamas. But in the end, there will not be a total military solution. There will have to be some kind of negotiation, even if it's a negotiation for surrender or a negotiation for Hamas leaders to go into exile. Countries like Russia, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt are going to be essential for that, whatever the Israelis say at the moment.
Lindsay in Tel Aviv, thank you very much, as ever. Well, it's been more and more difficult for us to reach doctors inside Gaza. But earlier I spoke to Dr. Mohammed Abu Mugaisib, a medical coordinator for Médecins Sans Frontières there, and asked him what pressures the civilians are facing now.
Another Hamas guy.
I mean, every day it's becoming worse and worse. I mean, the situation. I mean, I mean, people are dying every day. We are dying every day here in Gaza. I mean, in terms of basic life things, I mean, it's becoming worse. Drinkable water is very difficult to find. Food are limited. Hospitals, I mean, hospitals are no more hospitals, you can call them. You can call them just, I mean, shelters, parking. I mean, people are sheltering there. There is no privacy anymore. I mean, doctors are crying, surgeons are crying, they're exhausted. They are working since 19 days, 24 hours or 7. I mean, the situation is really horrible.
The Israelis are saying that they're trying to kill Hamas fighters. Who is dying in these airstrikes?
What we are seeing is children and civilians who are dying. I mean, bombing one building, what you can get is dead children, dead babies, and wounded babies and wounded women. That's what we get in the hospitals.
And what can you do for them when they come to your hospitals? What's left in terms of medicine and supplies?
I mean, we are operating, I mean, our surgeons, you maybe heard we are operating on the floor. I mean, we are operating without painkillers, without anesthesia. They are amputating patient children without anesthesia. Imagine in front of their families, the operation is done, the surgical operation. I mean, the surgeons are completely exhausted. Some of them, they broke up. I mean, they are burned out. They are crying. They are working since 19 days without stop.
What about the fuel situation in the hospitals? Do you still have enough fuel?
I mean, according to the health authorities, there is fuel running, but I think it's limited. I mean, sooner or later it will stop because the hospital.
Médecins Sans Frontières, an NGO, Doctors Without Borders. Thanks, Chatter. I know that. When I said he's Hamas, I was joking. It was a dark, cruel joke about the way that Israel operates.
Hospitals are depending 100% on generators, and means on fuel. So if the fuel will not enter tomorrow, after tomorrow, it will stop. I think at that moment there will be a huge disaster in Gaza.
The Gaza Health Ministry has compiled a list of all the 7,000 or so people who have been killed in these bombardments, their names and their ID numbers. Would you like to see the Israeli authorities have a look at that list?
What I mean, of course, I would like them to see. I mean, to see, and I'm sure they know. I mean, they know very well Gaza. I mean, they know the neighborhood of Gaza. They know where to target. I mean, they see the TV. They see the most of them are civilians. But I think it's. I mean, what we want is to stop the war. That's it. I mean, we as well here. I'm MSF.
He's basically saying Israel knows where the target. He's trying to get the doctor, to say that Israel is deliberately targeting civilians, and he doesn't want to say it, but he's basically saying it without saying it. That's it.
Yes, I'm representing Doctors Without Borders, but I'm also calling to stop the war. We are dying every day. Everyone in Gaza, the population is dying every day.
And finally and briefly, do you have any family with you in the Gaza Strip?
Yes, I am with my family, and of course, I mean, we are sheltering, and according to the warning that we had to move to the south, we moved to the south. But actually, since 48 hours, the bombing and the airstrikes are on the south, morning till evening. It's close even to the place that I was sheltering in. So, I mean, there is no safe place, actually.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We wish you all the best. Good luck. Mohammed Abu Mugaisib, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk now to Elon Levy, who's a spokesman for the Israeli government. Elon Levy, thank you very much for coming back on our program. I want to first of all start by asking you about the
this guy fucking sucks.
situation in Moscow, which is rather strange. Goes to Moscow. This is a capital with which Israel has good relations, and you're now calling on the Russians to expel Hamas. Explain that to us, please.
Indeed, Hamas showed the world that it is worse than ISIS with the October 7th massacre, and we expect...
Wait, it was Hamas? Bro, first it was 15 9/11s, now it's 20 9/11s. First it was Hamas's ISIS, and now it's worse than ISIS? That's crazy. The 9/11 inflation has hit Hamas super hard, bro. These guys are like one step removed from being like, Hamas is worse than Hitler. Like, it's crazy.
Expect the world to treat it exactly like ISIS. No country in the world would have diplomatic relations or accept diplomatic delegations from ISIS.
Except, you know, Israel is worse at its indiscriminate violence against the civilian population that it has put in an open-air prison. So technically, by that design, no country should ever talk to Israel. But of course, you know, that's not the case, right? Wait another week for that. Yeah, next week is going to be like Hamas worse than fucking Nazi Germany.
And the same is true of Hamas. We completely condemn the invitation for Hamas to visit Moscow. We view this as an act of support for terrorism, an act that legitimizes their atrocities.
They want it both ways. Like, they want to fucking prop up Hamas as like the only fucking governing body. They bully and destroy the Palestinian Authority. And then when other nations decide to also negotiate with Hamas because, like, that's what Israel's propped up as the only guy, they get mad. Your man did this. Benjamin Netanyahu and every other leadership in Israel has done similar things, but still.
And we're calling on the Russians to expel the Hamas delegation immediately and the whole world to close ranks against Hamas, just as the whole world closed ranks against ISIS a decade ago.
But the Russians could come in quite handy as mediators, and we know that you talk to the Qataris talk to Hamas, and there is mediation behind closed doors. Could the Russians do the same thing, or are they completely, is it unacceptable for them to have anything to do with Hamas whatsoever?
It is unacceptable for any nation to have anything to do with the terror organization that on October 7th burned, butchered, raped, tortured, and mutilated its way through the communities in southern Israel. Hamas is worse than ISIS. It broadcasts its crimes live, sometimes on its victims' own social media, with terrific violence trying to shock the world. And we expect the whole world to close ranks around Hamas as we continue with our campaign to wipe Hamas out, by the way, just as the whole civilized world wiped out ISIS 10 years ago. That is our model for the campaign with Hamas. We've learned from the West, learned from the Western campaign, from the international coalition to destroy ISIS, and that's what we intend to continue.
Wait, why can't I click on this? What the fuck? Come on. Give me the pub. That's annoying. The article title reads, why is Israel not intervening to counter the Islamic State? Though frequently threatened by the Islamic State, Israel has maintained since the beginning of the conflict a consistent non-interventionist policy. Israel halts medical treatment, which meant that they were giving medical treatment for members of Syria's Nusra Front. The change took place a month after Israeli Druze ambushed wounded Syrian rebels being transported in IDF ambulances, killing one of the men. 5 members of the Druze community were later arrested on suspicion of murder. Why is it that Israel was not intervening with ISIS, even though they say Hamas is ISIS? No relations with terrorist collectives that don't abide by international law. Yo, Israel, is this you? How Israel became a safe haven for Russian billionaires? I'm sorry. Are you going to tell me that it's really weird that Israel is one of the most common second passports among Russian-born billionaires? You think there's a... That's crazy. How about you chill out, dude? What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that Israel is incredibly self-interested? Does this argument even matter? Hamas and ISIS are both horrible. I mean, by the metrics of how horrible Hamas is, like, Israel is doing the same shit tenfold now. Okay? That's kind of the major point that I have, the major point of contention that I have with Israel's operations. I hope people understand that. Like, yeah, Hamas is bad. What they did on October 7th was ruthless. It was brutal. You know what else is also ruthless and brutal? Doing that tenfold, which is what Israel is doing and has been doing even before October 7th. It's orders of magnitude worse. So you can fucking keep chirping and say Hamas is ISIS, Hamas is ISIS, they're the terrorists, we are the state, they're the terrorists, we're the state. But people see it. People see what's going on. Hamas does not have the capacity to starve the entire 9 million Israeli population. Hamas does not have the capacity to stop them from having access to food, access to water, access to power, access to fuel, which is one of the only ways that the desalination pumps can work inside of Gaza. Only way that hospitals can operate inside of Gaza. Come on, dude. In the game of terrorism, Israel is the Mac Daddy. Well, America is the Mac Daddy. Israel is the little bro, but still significantly more successful at doing terror than Hamas ever could. Unimaginable. Russian libs are insanely fucking unhinged on this, by the way. Literally the worst Zionist takes imaginable. As a Georgian, now I feel like a fucking idiot after pushing back against the dehumanization of Russians for the past year. What is this article, bro? How Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice in Israel? What the fuck is this article?
Convicted American pedophiles to escape justice by moving to Israel. So Ian Lee has been following this for more than a year, and he traveled to Israel for this investigation. He worked with a group that...
Okay, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch that because... You want to know why I don't want to watch that? Well, one, because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. And two, I don't want to take that away from France. Like, it's kind of fucked up for us to just be like, Israel is taking away safe harbor for pedophiles away from the shining beacon of pedophile prosperity, France. You know what I mean? It's kind of fucked. It's kind of fucked. They want to be European, and they have now, they're doing French shit. France only wants the entertainment industry pedos. That's true. France is like, we will only take your pedophiles if they're very good at their work. Not very good at pedophilia. That part doesn't matter. But they have to be very good at movies. If they got movie magic mindset, we will take them.
You're doing with Hamas until victory.
Okay, you must have heard about this list of the 7,000 victims in Gaza of Israeli bombing, their names and their ID numbers issued by the Gaza Health Ministry. Have you seen that list?
I have not seen that list. I have to say the human suffering in Gaza as a result of Hamas's decision to declare war on the people of Israel on October 7th is truly heartbreaking. None of us want to be in this situation. It's the situation we're in because Hamas declared war.
It's just like, it's funny because, again, like, they act like October 7 was in a vacuum. Like, there's no way that Palestinians could fucking push back. You know what I mean? Like fucking lose their minds and like ultimately arrive at a point where they're just like, this is the military operation. Like, we're doing this, okay? But also simultaneously, they're like, every single Gazan has to die because they did October 7. And it's like, it's this, like, if one thing is bad, you have to understand that you are responsible and you're doing it, making it worse. I don't know. Maybe he was in a coma and he woke up. He had no idea. He was in a time chamber since 1944, and he just woke up on October 7th, 2023, and was like, "That's crazy! I can't believe that we finally got a nation state with all mostly peaceful means. I assume, right? Because we're a peaceful people. And then now these fucking guys are coming out of nowhere and attacking us. That's really fucked up, you know." I saw a quote, "We will never forgive the Arabs for making us kill their children. Somehow Israel manages to be the victim still." Yeah, it's nuts. IDF is backing out from Nablus. They have failed again.
Hamas dragged us into a war we didn't want or even expect. But it's important to understand that, you know, according to the Gaza health authorities...
Do you want to see that list? Are you interested in the list?
I would certainly like to, because according to Hamas, if you were to believe Hamas, there are no terrorists in the Gaza Strip and there are no civilians in Israel. We've been very clear that our goal is to continue targeting the terrorists who perpetrated the October 7th massacre. That's why we're asking civilians to get out of the way, despite Hamas doing everything it can to stop them evacuating, setting up roadblocks.
Right.
We want to
Let
go
me just
after
stop you
terrorists.
there,
We want the civilians to move.
Can I just stop you there for a second? You did ask them to move, and they did move, and then you bombed them where they moved to.
God damn, dude, what is happening with Channel 4? Why are they like this? Can someone explain this to me? Can a British person finally speak out in the chat and say something productive for once? Why are they like this? They've been like consistently better than most other Western media.
I'll give you an example. Yesterday, the IDF struck a...
I feel like I understand why the Tories are constantly trying to take their funds away. I get it. They kind of deserve it, you know what I mean? They're like actually doing decent journalism, which is kind of fucked up. And therefore I perfectly understand why the pedophile Tories want to take all the funds away, the remaining funds.
Target in Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip. It was a rocket launcher that Hamas had set up between a mosque and a kindergarten. Under international law, that is 100% a legitimate military target. Our campaign, our exercise of our right to self-defense in this campaign is to totally eliminate the enemy that perpetrated the October 7th massacre. And the reason that we're...
And their babies. The babies played a big role. 3,000 children have been ruthlessly slaughtered by Israel since October 7th. 3,000 children, just children, under the age of 18, okay? So what is this man saying? Is he saying that, like, these 3,000 children are Hamas? Is he saying that they had to die to take revenge on October 7th? Are the kids, you know, are they a part of the operations? Like, what do they do?
We're asking civilians to move out of the northern Gaza Strip. By the way, to move a short distance. The total distance is the length of the Edgware Road in London. Right. The reason we're asking them to move is because Hamas is embedded.
Never forget, everything that Israel says about Gaza and Hamas can be literally deployed back to them as an argument. If you don't even know anything about the conversation, you could literally turn around and say every single thing back to them and ask, do you think this is consistent? Is this a consistent principle you have? I'll give you another example. The baby deaths, right? Like, if you think that your bombing campaign is justifiable upon Gaza, which is your open-air prison, your concentration camp that you operate, okay, does that fucking mean that, like, the babies that were burned in a kibbutz on October 7th, was that justifiable? This was retaliation for Israel's brutal occupation. Do you find that to be justifiable? No, you don't. Of course you don't find that to be justifiable. It's crazy. Nobody wants babies to fucking die. So why is it okay when one side's babies fucking die? Why is that all right? Why are you making that argument? People always fucking say, for example, oh, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. Okay, Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. Do they not? They do. I mean, according to international law, they have a right to defend themselves. It's what they do in their defense that is, like, called into question. Israel says Palestinians have human shields. Well, the IDF headquarters is in a fucking mall. Israel has mandatory service, which means every single fucking Israeli adult has at some point become a soldier, which makes them enemy combatants. More so than the random Palestinians that don't have mandatory conscription or mandatory service. So would you consider all Israelis that were murdered, ruthlessly slaughtered, to be enemy combatants? All men and women have to serve in the Israeli military. So what's going on there? Are they all enemy combatants that were slaughtered? Or do you consider them to be civilians that were slaughtered? And also on top of that, absolutely zero people would consider that to be appropriate. Except for like random people online that, everybody gets hung up on and think is a demonstration of how the entirety of the DSA operates or some shit. Right? So how does that work? Why? Why does it work that way? Why does it work that way? Because, I'll tell you why it works that way. Because there's a second thing that people are not calling into question here, which is that Palestinians are not human. Israelis are. Palestinians are enemy combatants. Israelis are our neighbors. That's it. That's the major reason. That's the only when you come to that conclusion do you operate under the recognition that these are justifiable targets. These babies that have been slaughtered are perfectly fine. They should be slaughtered.
Sorry, Matt, if I could just explain, because I think it's an important point. Hamas has embedded its tunnels deep underneath civilian areas. And that's why we're asking people to move, because Hamas has put them in danger, and we don't want them to be in danger. We want to hurt Hamas, not the people of Gaza.
Have you ever... Okay, let me just...
That's bullshit. Suck my dick, you fucking liar.
Let me ask you finally, have you ever considered the possibility that, like other extremist organizations, Hamas may want you to overreact? They may want you to fall in what could ultimately...
Yeah, I mean, look. Much of the Kiryat today is located in the sands of Sarona, Templar, British Mandate. Ha-Kiryat, the Kiryat, is an area in central Tel Aviv consisting of urban military base north of Kaplan Street and a civilian area south of it. Ha-Kiryat contains the Tel Aviv District's government center and major Israel Defense Forces, Camp Rabin, named after Yitzhak Rabin. It's the IDF headquarters. It's in the middle of a fucking area. It's in the middle of a civilian area.
Be a trap, and that this would be detrimental to Israel's image around the world and also ultimately to your own security, even if you manage to kill Hamas commanders.
The attack that Hamas perpetrated on the morning of October 7th, when it murdered 1,400 of our people, tortured and it hurt more than 5,000 people, took 220 people hostage, was beyond the worst case nightmare scenarios that anyone in this country could imagine. And we're determined not to go back to 6 o'clock on the morning on October 7th. We can no longer live beside an ISIS-like terror organization that feels free and emboldened.
Yeah, again, like I said, dude, it's wild that they keep saying ISIS because, like, they've literally worked with ISIS. Like, come on, dude. Maybe that's why they wanted to, like, fuck up the SEO so nobody Googles Israel ISIS and finds out that, like, they've collaborated, you know? They've done collabs, like Fuckboy Supreme style.
To butcher, rape, burn, and behead our people at will. And that's why we're glad we're building an international coalition to wipe out ISIS, to wipe out Hamas, just as the civilized world wiped out ISIS. And we hope that civilians will indeed heed our warning, despite Hamas's best efforts to physically block them from leaving, which I don't need to say is, of course, a war crime.
Yeah, dude, you blowing up civilians is not a war crime. It's that Hamas is physically blocking people. Yeah. Crazy.
Okay. All right. Got to leave it there. And we have documented, Elon Levy, the suffering of the Israeli people in great detail and spoken to the families of the bereaved and the kidnapped. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Now, because we
didn't even slightly answer the question because they look fucking awful. I know, but it's like really annoying. Don't let any of these fucking charlatans get away with this shit, okay? It's so frustrating to me. Like, they were pretty good. Why do they insist so much on the ISIS comparison? Because the goal is to do a final solution on Palestinians in Gaza. Gaza is operated by Hamas. Hamas is the government there, okay? So the more you say Palestinians voted for Hamas, the more you say Hamas is ISIS, the more you conflate the difference between an average Palestinian and Hamas that you have already very successfully portrayed as a terror cell, the less people will look at what you're doing as like a genocide.
We cannot get access to Gaza ourselves. We can only get information about casualties from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which, like all government agencies there, is appointed by Hamas. Yesterday, President Biden cast doubt on their statistics, saying that no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. In response, the Gaza Health Ministry has tonight published a list of the names, as you just heard, and the ID numbers of more than...
Did you not say Hamas is a terrorist group? Wait, you mean, like, chat, Ahmad, you don't have to ban that guy. No, terrorism is a absolute fucking, absolutely a political designation. It is meant to deny habeas corpus to the enemy combatant. That's what it is. That's the real reason why we make this declaration, that someone is a terrorist. That's it. If you want to understand it from a political science perspective, that's what it is. My distinction, for the most part, is that civilian, non-combatant casualties are completely unacceptable. Okay? I think that they're unacceptable. They do happen as a consequence of how gruesome the conditions are that people are subjected to. They happen with the ANC. They happen with the IRA, right? Both they happened in Algeria against the French, the anti-colonial action against the French in Algeria. And the most effective way of ensuring that enemy combatants, or I'm sorry, civilian casualties don't occur is by ending occupations. You defend your lefty friends who defend Hamas, though. Can you not say Hamas is a terrorist group? This guy's a dumbass for sure. Why are we noticing less Latino votes? What would the ban accomplish? Aren't you the same guy that said you do not call cops? Oh, God. This guy is... Oh, my God. Oh, okay, I got it. This is like... I know where this guy's coming from. Oh, he's in here specifically to clip my response so he can fucking post it on a subreddit and be like, look, this guy loves Hamas, actually. No, he's not an H3 member. No. No H3 member says, aren't you the same guy who said you do not call the cops in 2020? Come on, brother. These are gripes that people are fighting for 4 years now. It's like the most pathetic state of existence. Come on. It's also not true. It's a classic clip chimp that people have ran with for 4 years now. Imagine fighting the demons in your head for 4 fucking years, brother man. Jesus Christ. Oof. Sad. One day you'll get better, I promise.
7,000 people, it says, have died since October the 7th. And a warning, there are some distressing scenes from the start in Jonathan Rugman's report.
This was southern Gaza this morning in the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike. It was reported that at least 15 Palestinians were killed. Few wars are better documented than this one, not least because the conflict has lasted for decades. But Gaza's health ministry, which issues the figures, is controlled by Hamas. And the Israelis have told President Biden that the overall death toll of over 7,000 Palestinians is not to be believed.
What they say to me is I have no notion that Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure...
This was fucking gross. I covered this extensively this morning. I told you exactly why it's fucking gross. I told you why it's completely unacceptable to say such a thing. And I showed you that the State Department itself has used these numbers. These numbers have always been very reliable. It's fucking annoying. And completely and utterly unacceptable for Brandon to come out and say that these numbers are unreliable. They've never been unreliable. It's ridiculous.
Innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
No incident has proved more controversial than this. Hundreds were reported killed at the Al-Ali hospital last week. Hamas says it was an Israeli airstrike, but the Americans, British, Canadians and French say a malfunctioning Palestinian rocket was most likely to blame. And Israel also queries the number of dead.
I see remains of fire. What I don't see is bodies. If 500 people were indeed killed here, or 471, which is the latest update from the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health in Gaza, where were they here?
American intelligence reckons between 100 and 300 died. Still,
that's crazy. Oh my God. The people that make these counts are fucking doctors, man. They're not terrorists. Oh my God. The people, also the American count is 100 to 300. That's interesting. I thought it was only 50. What happened? Now they're saying 100 to 300. Let me explain something to you. Okay? The people that are counting the dead are doctors. They're doctors. They're not Hamas. They're doctors. The Gazan Health Ministry is a civilian operation. It's like assuming that the worst debate, bro, the numbers are always undercounted. Yeah, it's the unholy debate. It's like how many babies were actually murdered debate when we're continuously murdering babies is like up there with defensive CP. You know what I mean? Anyway, it is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The Canadian meme, fucking military totally parroted the Israeli talking points. Yeah, so did the American ones. And the New York Times basically eviscerated their counterclaims in its entirety.
A terrible toll. But the Italians have gone with a far lower figure than that.
We need to avoid the negative impact of propaganda, because that missile that was said to have, in reality, it was around 50.
The hospital incident resulted in unusually large protests here in Jordan, and an Arab summit with President Biden was cancelled. But despite the controversy, the UN still uses the Gaza Health Ministry's casualty figures, as has the US State Department in the recent past.
Our review of what the Ministry of Health figures are that they're generally reliable. When we've done our own independent investigations on particular strikes.
Oh no, dog. You look kind of fucking Arab to me. I don't know. Seems like you might be Hamas. You know what I mean? Human Rights Watch, more like Hamas Rights Watch. Yeah, I'm thinking you don't want Israel finding the coordinates to your home. I'm thinking maybe there's a rocket. I'm just saying, Omar? The idea that every single person inside the Gaza Health Ministry is part of Hamas is insane. No, like, they can be, and some are. But there's an entire, it's like thinking that every single fucking person that works at the National Institute of Health or works at the CDC is like Stanley McChrystal, okay? That's the fucking insane part. Like, that's the issue. Is saying every DOJ person is a damn Biden supporter. There's a thing called career employees in the case of Gaza, also doctors and nurses. Yeah, it's even more than that. It's like, yeah, everyone at the CDC is Dick Cheney, so I don't listen to anything they ever say. I don't get the reference. Sorry. Okay, Dick Cheney, George W. Bush. Everyone that works at the fucking CDC is actually Dick Cheney himself. Okay, we can't trust those numbers. And that's funny because, like, that's what COVID deniers say. COVID deniers are like, well, technically, you know, I can't trust the CDC numbers because, you know, they want these vaccines. Fauci wants these vaccines to be implemented. So, like, you can't trust those numbers. And it's like, that's an insane thing that people push. And every one of these fucking liberals understands that that's an insane thing, but they do it when it comes to Israel's psychotic, like, anti-Palestinian position.
We have found no major discrepancies in the data, that they've generally been consistent. The reason for that is methodologically, the Ministry of Health has access to data from hospitals and morgues that simply isn't available to other collectors of data.
In 2000,
I'm telling you, dude, that number is an undercount. 7,000 is an undercount. There's 2,000 people that are under the rubble right now. Okay? There's so many more people under the rubble. Like, they don't have electricity. They're rationing for fucking 2 weeks now.
In 2018, we filmed the last major attempt to breach the Gaza border fence, in which hundreds of Palestinians were shot by Israeli snipers.
There have been 29 major cases.
A British NHS surgeon we met at a Gaza hospital said the casualty numbers were logged by hospital administrators, and that when he reviewed them, he found no evidence of exaggeration.
Who knows whether they have been massaging the figures? All I can say is that in our experience, in similar circumstances, and with our effort at independent verification, we found that we were in broad agreement. Our estimates were in broad agreement with the ministry figures.
This was the appalling scene at a hospital in northern Gaza last night. They say that truth is always the first casualty of war, but given the scale of Israel's bombardment, it's perhaps remarkable that casualties...
It's giving the article that reads, Israel demands correction from Bernie Sanders. Yeah, that article is a fucking classic. Hold on. Your numbers are wrong, and it's even worse than that, by the way. The numbers that you brought up are worse. Fact check, Israel demanded Sanders correct Palestinian child death claim. The death claim that Bernie Sanders put forward was that that it killed more. Sanders said, I don't forget what it I don't remember what Sanders said, but Israel corrected Sanders and said they only killed 532 Palestinian children. In a 2016 interview with the New York Daily News editorial board, Sanders said he recollected that 10,000 innocent people were killed in Gaza in 2014, although admitting that he doesn't remember the figures. I don't have it in my number. I don't have it in my number, but I think it's over 10,000. Later in the interview, he was corrected by a New York Daily News editorial board, and it was 10,000 wounded, and it was about 2,300 he believed to be killed. But this article title is fucking awesome.
Figures are still being compiled at all.